Welcome to the Irish Farmers Journal Weekly Podcast.
Hello and welcome to this week's podcast. I'm Hannah Quinn Mulligan. Coming up on this week's show, Theresa May and the DUP lock horns over the Brexit deal.
We see huge difficulties in the withdrawal agreement, and as it currently stands, my party could not support it. It treats Northern Ireland very, very differently to the rest of the United Kingdom.
And Punchestown was flooded with the white stuff as Dairy Day descended on the event centre.
We've just been on the calf housing place here, and we've been interested in the calf rearing, and we got a lot of good information there.
Well, there is plenty to get through in this week's podcast, but first, the Irish Farmers Journal held their second annual Dairy Day event in Punchestown on Tuesday. Now, I could hear some of you mutter, when will Dry Stock Day be? Well, as a suckler farmer, I might sneakily be with you, but bear with us while we hear from some of the farmers who made it to Dairy Day for what was a huge showcase of international speakers and ideas around the dairy industry. Our correspondent, Thomas Hubert, was let loose to mingle with the crowd.
Well, I'm here with one of the dairy farmers visiting Dairy Day this Tuesday in Punchestown. Can I have your name and just maybe briefly where you're from, what kind of a farm you have?
Derek Noonan in Castletown Road, County Cork, and we have a dairy farm of 130 cows.
You were just telling me I suppose you have expanded since quotas ended, and you're coming to a point where you're looking for maybe new devices, new things to help. Where do you stand on your farm at the moment, and what do you need?
Well, what do we need? We more cubicle space really, I suppose, and roadways, water, spending better water trucks, and maybe a bit of machinery now and again, but not too much like really.
So you're trying to do more with as much time and as much energy as you have?
That's right, yeah. With as little less work as possible, like really, and that kind of thing.
How many of you work on the farm at the moment, the 130 cows?
Two, one full-time labourer and myself.
And how does that work for you to find the right person and to keep them working? Has it been all right?
Yeah, it's been heavy. I have a fellow now with me for the last 5 years. He's a Hungarian farm lad, and he's happy enough and works from 8 to 6 usually, and we don't be working too many long hours, like. Keep me happy that way.
When you're talking about things to help you do the work more efficiently, the machinery or the devices for the buildings and the water, do you have capacity to invest at the moment? It's been a tough year. How is it financially at the moment?
Yeah, financially it's just tough enough, I suppose, all right, but you just have to be prepared for these years. You're going to have bad years as well, but you just have to keep the head down for a few years and get back up again.
Ride the storm.
Exactly, yeah.
How are you for fodder for the coming winter?
We'd have about 80%, I'd say. So maybe a small but shot. All depends on the spring now. If we get a good spring, we'll be okay again.
And any particular strategies over the winter? Are you going to feed differently or do things differently?
We grow a bit of extra kale now in this west of wall new grass. We've got about 14 acres from a neighbour next to me, so we should be okay that way, I'd say.
Okay, Derek, thanks very much. And I'm now joined by one of the people in the audience at the technical demonstrations there. What's your name and where do you come from?
Grace Tremaine, I'm from Wicklow.
Where do you stand on farming in your own career? You're one of the younger members of the audience here. Are you still a student?
No, I'm still a student.
How do you look at dairy farming? Do you see it as a career for yourself?
Yeah, well, hopefully there's a bit of work for women in dairy farming, but there's not a whole lot happening at the moment.
Are you from a farm yourself?
No, I just work on one.
So would you be looking at working on somebody else's farm, looking for a job as a farm worker?
Yeah.
And why is it something that attracts you? What do you find interesting in it?
I don't know, just hands-on work, better than sitting in the office all day.
Do you have any experience with cows, any in the family or?
No, just working on one for about 2 years.
How has that been?
It's good, yeah, I like it.
So all the best. And with two other visitors here to Dairy Day, can you just give me your names and where you're from, what kind of farming you do?
Linda and David Dean from Mallow in County Cork, and we're dairy farming on a leased farm.
Okay. And what kind of size of a herd do you have?
We're making just over 200 cows.
Okay. Now, what would you be looking for at a day like today, Dairy Day? Any particular projects you have on the farm or information you're looking for at this point?
Well, we've just been on the calf housing place here, and we've been interested in the calf rearing, and we got a lot of good information there.
Is it because you've more calves and looking to have new infrastructure put in, or how is that on the farm at the moment?
I suppose to improve what calf sheds we have, see how we can improve it and see how the fact that we have more calves to rear, see how we can solve problems.
Health and all that?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else you're interested in today? Be looking for answers to questions?
No, there's an awful lot of good information here, and just generally to go through it and see what's there for us.
A question, and some of the sessions look into that, is that the year we've had, it's been quite difficult. How has it been in your case in Mallow? How are you doing with fodder and feeding and all that for the winter ahead?
Definitely we'd be very tight on feeding, but we'll be stretching it out by possibly using some straights or something, like that. A lot depends on the spring we get.
A lot of people say that. Okay, well, all the best for that. Thanks, enjoy the day.
Thank you.
Okay.
Another visitor here, you're again coming from Cork. What's your name? What kind of farm do you have?
John O'Sullivan. We're dairy cows and milking just next to Cork Airport.
What kind of size of a herd will you have?
I'll be milking around 70, 80 odd, sure.
And how are things on the farm at the moment? Any issues or questions you're looking for answers today at Dairy Day?
I don't know, I suppose with me being in college we're kind of looking at expanding, and they're giving talks on sheds and stuff here, so we're kind of looking at new ideas for sheds and parlours. And
so are you joining the parents and looking to build up the farm to sustain a wider family? Is that the idea?
Yeah, totally.
What's the plan for that? Is it more like a partnership, or are you going to work together for a few years and decades?
No, I'd say once I kind of get into it, I'd say Dad's kind of on about getting out.
When in, when out.
Yeah.
And finally, I suppose you're with a lot of other farmers here. Are you maybe meeting people you know, or what's the mood at the moment? I know it's been a tough enough year. What are people saying or people thinking about, as you said, investing and all that?
I don't know, I suppose a lot of us kind of here, kind of like there's a talk earlier on how to like fodder and how not to run out of it and manage cash flow and all kind of that stuff really. I suppose just keep going for next year, because I think are they saying for every ton of ration you give out this year you're losing, is it 5 kg or something, so you're kind of trying to plan now for next year and see how the way the weather will go.
Thomas Hubert there, learning the secrets of the white gold industry. Well, something that will definitely affect the white gold, and indeed every industry, is Brexit. The UK Prime Minister Theresa May needs the support of the Democratic Unionist Party, or DUP, to pass her Brexit agreement. However, DUP MEP Diane Dodds, that's right, wife of Nigel, for any of you in the know, told our market specialist Phelim O'Neill on Wednesday why her party couldn't support the draft Brexit withdrawal agreement.
Well, we said at the very start that we wanted a Brexit that was good for the United Kingdom in all its parts, that treated the United Kingdom the same in all its parts, and that would be good for Northern Ireland both constitutionally and economically. And we see huge difficulties in the withdrawal agreement, and as it currently stands, my party could not support it. It treats Northern Ireland very, very differently to the rest of the United Kingdom. To all intents and purposes, as Northern Ireland will apply the customs code of the European Union, and Northern Ireland will apply the rules of the single market. Now, we believe that that will eventually distance us from our biggest market, the market in Great Britain, and should not be allowed by the United Kingdom government because it is not good for the internal market of the United Kingdom.
And yet, and I suppose the DUP would be recognised as the party of business, the party of farmers in Northern Ireland. Both the business community and the Ulster Farmers Union have endorsed this as better than a no-deal arrangement. That puts you at variance with them.
Well, it puts us at variance with them in as much as they seem to have accepted the binary choices given to them by Theresa May's government. We do not believe that it is a binary choice between no deal or this withdrawal deal. We believe that this withdrawal deal is a bad deal for the United Kingdom, is a bad deal for Northern Ireland. And Theresa May seems to have moved her goalposts, where she used to say that no deal was better than a bad deal. Now she's saying a bad deal is better than no deal. So, you know, we're not at variance. I've read very carefully the statement from the Ulster Farmers Union where they say it is better than no deal, but that there are huge difficulties with this in securing access to the Great Britain market. And remember, Great Britain is by far our biggest market. We sell more in Great Britain than we do in the Republic of Ireland, the rest of Europe and the rest of the world all added together. Barriers between us and our main market are bad.
You're saying or suggesting there, if I understand you correctly, that it's not an either-or situation, that there could be a third way.
Well, I think we need to tell the government that this is not good enough, that there are too many variances and disruptions within the United Kingdom's internal market. I believe also that this actually means that people, farmers, businesses, families in Northern Ireland will be impacted by European legislation over which they have not given any democratic consent through their politicians, either in Belfast or London. I don't think that that's good for democracy.
Okay, it's part, I suppose, of what has been mooted in recent days. I wonder what your view would be. You know, if we sort of delayed this process somewhat, we talk about a transition that's due to end in 2020. What if that was rolled out another couple of years? Would you have any view on that?
Well, we cannot have a never-ending transition. We need to leave, and we need to make sure that we do that at a defined point. The 29th of March 2019 is the date in United Kingdom law at which the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland leaves the European Union, and we need to respect that. However, what we need to do is get a deal that satisfies all areas of the United Kingdom, and we do not believe that this deal does that. As I said, we believe it is constitutionally bad, it is economically bad, it creates a democratic deficit in Northern Ireland where we have no say over the rules that will bind us. And we think that the Prime Minister needs to go back on it.
One of the things that's debated, I suppose, in media and indeed in political circles as well, you know, is that we're now so much better informed than we were in 2016 when we made that decision. I know your party at the time campaigned for a no vote to leave. Given all that has happened since and what we know now, would your position on that still be the same? If we had a referendum tomorrow, would you say we should vote to leave?
Well, my party has always been a Eurosceptic party. We've always said that there could be a future for the United Kingdom, the fifth largest economy of the world outside the European Union. We did not jump to a decision on the referendum. When David Cameron went to Europe, we said we would wait to see the outcome of his renegotiation. Could we improve the basis of our membership of the European Union? And actually the European Union gave us pretty little in return, and therefore David Cameron's offering when he came back from Europe was pretty threadbare, and I think that fed into the result of the referendum. As for this notion that people didn't know what they were voting for, people voted for a future for the United Kingdom outside the European Union. They pretty much knew that that was leaving the institutions of the European Union, but not leaving Europe. We want a deal that will keep us close to Europe, that will keep us walking alongside our neighbours in terms of security, in terms of the important social issues like human trafficking, in terms of research and innovation. We want to be close to Europe and all of those things, but we want to leave the political institutions of the European Union. And of course that is what 580 odd pages is all about,
and which
doesn't seem to have satisfied anyone.
And you don't see any reason to have a second referendum?
I think a second referendum would be bad for democracy. When people have spoken, I think you should enact the will of the people, and that would be bad.
An emphatic Diane Dodds there talking to Phelim O'Neill. Well, while the DUP might have qualms about the draft agreement, the Ulster Farmers Union have been adamant that the party should do all in their power to avoid a no-deal scenario. Our northern correspondent Peter McCann spoke to Carrickfergus sheep farmer Edward Adamson, who told him why avoiding a no-deal was so important to his farm.
Well, a no-deal Brexit is not an option. We consume 20% of our lambs in Northern Ireland, so if 40-45% go south and the rest go to the mainland as meat, but we have all that southern lamb. We could not eat our way out of the problem. We need somewhere for it to go. The withdrawal the bill that has been agreed at the minute, it looks as good an option as we're going to get. It appears that the EU will not concede any more to what they're doing at the minute. So if that's what we have to go with, it's either, I think for most sheep farmers, it's either to forget about Brexit completely or take what we have on the table at the minute.
Peter McCann there. Stay tuned because we'll be hearing why you can never replace Bonio from the diet and a market specialist on the next SNP sale.
New disadvantaged area maps. 2,000 new areas included. In this week's Irish Farmers Journal, see the new ANC map. Prices rise for some cattle tags. EU cuts tax on Russian fertilisers. Pig farmers questioning future after new price drop. First vet struck off register for professional misconduct. And Irish Country Living offer their top tips on how not to end up in financial hot water before the festive season. Inside this week's issue, on sale today.
Now, a new survey from iReach has revealed that 21% of people believe that wholly plant-based diets for humans are ridiculous. Well, dietitian Orla Walsh was at Dairy Day, and while she didn't ridicule the rise of vegan diets, she did sound a note of caution if someone was considering cutting out dairy.
A percentage of the population are following a vegan diet or a plant-based diet. Some of those people will continue on for the rest of their lives. At the moment, some people are just doing it to see if it suits them. But I suppose because a vegan diet is not a nutritionally complete diet, and it involves supplementation or fortification or a really great understanding nutritional education to follow it for the long term without any ill effects, I don't think it's going to be a threat to the dairy industry.
We see a lot about kind of the Instagram generation where you see all these very fit, healthy bodies and on this vegan diet. But, can you replace dairy with, say, other dietary supplements or alternatives?
Personally, first and foremost, don't pay attention to Instagram because a lot of it is fake. So people are suggesting that they do certain amount of workouts, that they eat a certain amount of foods or in a certain way, and that may not be the truth. Sorry, what was your question?
So we'll go back to where we'll cut that bit. So say for the Instagram generation that we have now that are being told that they can supplement or replace dairy with kind of vegan supplements or iron tablets. I mean, is that true? Could you do that, or should you maintain dairy in the diet?
So the problem is if you take out dairy, so if you take out, for example, milk from your diet, you now need to replace not only calcium and not only B12, but other vitamins and minerals, such as iodine. And the problem is people aren't doing that. And what they're leaving is nutritional gaps in their diet. These nutritional gaps have to be filled. If they're not filled, there'll be both short and long-term consequences of this. For example, we know in Ireland half of women going into pregnancy aren't eating or consuming enough iodine. That's having a big impact on the neurodevelopment, the brain development of the baby, and will have subsequent consequential issues when the baby is born in terms of IQ, reading, and lots of other things. So there is an issue with taking dairy out and not filling the nutritional gaps. Are most people filling the nutritional gaps? No, I don't believe they are. So I don't think taking dairy out without the appropriate nutritional education is a good idea or a healthy idea for the majority of people.
And is dairy important because, say, it would be cheaper than another source of iodine? Is that why it's so important?
Dairy's a great source of iodine, for example. So too is fish and seaweed. But the problem is hardly any people eat seaweed and hardly any people, unfortunately, in Ireland eat fish. So they are reliant on the dairy industry to be providing them with the iodine that they need. And iodine is needed for thyroid function, and a thyroid is needed for the metabolism. So I think people are not consuming enough iodine when they pull out dairy because they rely so heavily on it.
Orla Walsh there. Now, we had a number of international speakers who came over for Dairy Day, and agribusiness reporter Lorcan Allen spoke to Lucas Fuse, Director of Dairy Market Intelligence at High Ground Dairy in Chicago, and Rick Leuters, Managing Director of Trigona Dairy Trade, in what was a collage of accents.
Maybe turning to the demand side of things, Lucas, how's the US dairy markets holding up? Like, what's demand like over there?
We've had a very good year again on demand, actually. Domestically, things have been quite good on cheese and butter specifically, continuing to see expanded consumption in the U.S., which is always a good sign. Exports as well, even in light of all of the trade disagreements maybe that the U.S. is going through right now. Exports until very recently have continued very good throughout this year to date, 2018 to date. This overall is a bit concerning to us, actually, because our milk price is at just break even, or in recent weeks moving into negative levels at the farm gate. So even with this very good demand, we've continued to not be able to see prices recover very strongly, and that's again mostly due to the earlier referencing of the continued very strong production throughout the US.
Okay, interesting. And in Europe, Rick, I mean, what's the demand picture like? I mean, we've seen an extraordinary story in Europe where, in terms of fats and the butter picture, I mean, what's the picture like right now in terms of demand in Europe?
I think in Europe, demand is looking at the economy, it's going good. Only drinking milk, I think, is going down. But on the export side, drinking milk is still growing, especially in Asia. So that looks positive, the demand side.
Okay. And I suppose finally, I mean, you've mentioned there that in Q1, Q2, you might see a bit of a lower production. I mean, what's your kind of outlook into 2019 in terms of dairy markets? I know it's like trying to find a needle in a haystack, but if you had a rough outline of what you think maybe might happen?
Sorry, I forgot my crystal ball. No, I think if milk production, if milk price payout would go down and milk production is down, I think that the commodity prices will be stable or up. So that would be a good thing. But if milk production would start to increase again, then we could have some tough times. If you also in all the uncertainties in the world, that's normally not good for demand in general. So,
in terms of the skim milk powder intervention stocks as well in Europe, I mean, if we continue to see those being cleared, what could that do for dairy markets in terms of getting rid of all those stocks?
That would be very positive. Look at 2009 when we had intervention, and after the volumes were sold, we were again starting the skim milk powders. We're starting again with it too. So, and I think it will be cleared soon because there's now a rush going on the skim milk powder somehow. I think it's a simple calculation. If you can buy now, the last tender was €1,251 per metric ton. I think the Brussels next volume, which we will know on Thursday, will be above 1,300 for skim milk powder, or even higher. And there are now already areas in Belgium. There's no intervention stock which is older than the 1st of August, so there's no release in Belgium this tender. So I think there's a good demand, and when it's sold, prices that's good for the market.
Okay. And Lucas, from your perspective in the US, like what's your outlook in terms of 2019? Is milk production going to continue in the US growth, and how will that affect demand and prices?
I think for the near term, it's still a bit of a struggle in the States with kind of lower prices overall, especially as we move past this holiday peak demand season into the first quarter of 2019. We might struggle to see any real recovery, but looking into maybe mid-year 2019, especially if cow numbers continue to move down in the States and milk production starts to shrink a little bit, that could put some pressure on prices as well. While the cheese market, I think, is very well supplied in the U.S. with expanded production capacity, I think all eyes are starting to turn to what we just referenced with European skim milk powder inventories. From the U.S. perspective on what we call non-fat dry milk, at least, our production has trended lower and our stocks are at their lowest level in 18 months now. So from a global perspective on powder markets, that could be good for the market overall.
Lorcan Allen there. Science Week might have ended on Sunday, but our resident tillage expert, Stephen Robb, spoke to Dan Kettridge about the development of his bionutrient meter, a new device that will change the way consumers will buy food.
I'm a farmer, organic farmer from Massachusetts in the States, and I'm also the executive director of a nonprofit educational organization, an NGO called the Bionutrient Food Association. Our mission is to increase quality in the food supply. By quality, we mean flavor and aroma and nutritive value. And so I was talking to the farmers about basic principles of working with the land to increase plant health and crop nutrient levels. And I was also talking about our project to build a tool that consumers can use to take to the grocery store to test quality at point of purchase, so we can have transparency.
This tool caught quite a bit of interest among the audience today. Can you just explain a little bit about it, what it is, what's the technology, and what's the implications?
A little bit. The tool works through the principle of what's called spectroscopy, and basically everything in chemistry, copper or zinc or vitamin C or vitamin D, is an element or a compound in chemistry, but it's a vibration in physics. Copper vibrates at a certain frequency. Vitamin D vibrates at a certain frequency. And so the spectrometer basically flashes a light at the cucumber or the carrot or the milk, and it reads the light that bounces back. And by reading the light, it can tell you what's in the cucumber or the milk. And, some milk has, omega-6, omega-3 ratios that are quite unhealthy. And some milk has omega-6, omega-3 ratios that are quite healthy. And so we should be able to, with a flash of light, tell you whether this milk is good for you or not with this tool, and get right straight past all the marketing and labeling.
And how are you going to define what's good for you, what's healthy, and what's what are the quality parameters so much? Where are you going to get the data from?
Well, we're launching our first generation of our tool. That we're calling it a developer kit, the prototype version, in 3 weeks at our annual conference. And so we're working with these people, these data partners. We've already got a number of them we're working with, but we're broadening the scope. So over the next year, we've got people in, I think, 5 continents that are actively partnering with us to build the data sets necessary to identify the variation, to say, this is what high-quality milk looks like, this is what low-quality milk looks like, etc. Currently, we don't really have those definitions, at least from a nutritional perspective.
Okay, so a question was put to you in the audience as well about when you expect to see this technology coming on stream onto the market. So when can Irish consumers expect to be using this technology?
I'm guessing a couple of the prototypes will be here, next month. But the consumer tool we're expecting to have available next year, so at the end of next year, December of 2019, and then it looks extremely likely that it will be built into smartphones, like a camera, basically, in smartphones in either 2020 or 2021. So in short order, it should be in a lot of people's pockets.
So what are the opportunities or threats facing food producers with this technology coming on stream?
I guess the opportunities are to get paid well for producing food that's actually nutritious, to increase their economic bottom line, to improve the health of their soil, to have a better impact on the environment and the health of the people that they're feeding. The threat is that if they continue to produce crops that are nutritionally devoid, they will lose market share. So our hope is that we can use economic self-interest to inspire people to produce crops that are more nutritious, which will heal the earth and heal the people that eat them.
And that's it from this week's podcast. Thank you very much for listening, and remember to keep up to date with all our farm coverage on our social media platforms and in this week's paper, where we reveal what townlands are in the new ANC maps. Remember, you can also subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, where it will appear every week as if by magic and can be listened to for free. The sound engineer this week was Ferdy Mooney, and I'm Hannah Quinn.
The Irish Farmers Journal podcast, online at farmersjournal.ie and on iTunes every Thursday.